Hello everybody, we are back here again. We're going to put another part on my old CR250. Last time we put on the flywheel weight. This time I'm going to be installing a new throttle tube. It is made by G2 Ergonomics, and basically they call it a throttle tamer, and what it's going to do is slow down the opening of the throttle. So basically anything under half throttle, it opens it a little slower. After half throttle, it goes back to like stock ratio of opening the throttle quickly. So I think that's going to help me kind of keep the power down, make it a little bit easier to ride, especially going up hills. I don't want to be spinning, I want to be getting traction. Here is the throttle tube. I actually opened this up already because I was just super excited to look at it. I've never had aluminum throttle tube like this before. It just looked really cool, so I couldn't wait to open it. So you guys didn't get that satisfaction, unfortunately. So I've always had these plastic throttle tubes, and this one, this is the highest quality throttle tube I've ever had. I mean, it's super light. It's all aluminum. Actually, I'm guessing billet aluminum, like this part. But you can kind of see that ratio of the cam I was talking about. A little bit later, I'll compare the stock throttle tube to this one, and it'll really make it obvious for you so you can see the difference. But this is super high quality. It's got the bushings inside the throttle tube that actually make it open and close a little easier, kind of like almost like having a bearing on the throttle tube. Makes it a lot smoother. So to start, grab the throttle tube. You can kind of see there's a little, I guess you can call it a little notch or nipple or whatever you want to call that. You have to line that up with the corresponding notch on the actual cam. The cam is removable because you can actually buy different ratios. So say you want a cam that's going to open a throttle faster than the stock one would, you can actually get one of those. So there's all different options for it. I chose the one with this Throttle Tamer cam. So to put it on there, you line it up. It actually takes quite a bit of force. I had to push pretty hard to get that to kind of drop down inside there. Be really careful, make sure you get it on the correct way because it's a pain in the butt to get back off. But you know it's on all the way because it'll sit there flush. It actually has a recessed groove on the throttle tube side, and it kind of fits down inside there. Once you're done checking out your throttle tube, basically get started on the bike. I do run hand guards, so I have a little bit more work. I got to take my hand guard off. They've had the crap beat out of them, and I've got my money's worth out of them, as you can see. I have used them quite a bit in my span of owning the bike since like 09 or 2010, so a long time. Once you get that off, basically I'm going to take off my grip donut, and then you just got to cut the grip off with whatever you have, you know, big knife, small knife, whatever you got. I have my pocket knife handy, so just going to use that. Next, what I had to do was loosen up my front brake assembly, and I'm going to slide that over to the left, kind of up the handlebar, and then that's going to let me take off the rubber cover that covers my throttle tube assembly. And this is going to be a test of futility in your life because that was a pain in the butt to get off, and that's saying the least. Now, my bike had this different kind of throttle housing. I don't know if all of these bikes, like all the Hondas or any other bike that this is going to fit, is going to have the same setup as my bike. But mine has a pulley under this cover that basically makes it smoother and assists the throttle cable as it's being pulled. So this one was a little bit extra step, possibly, compared to other guys that are putting this on. Here you can get a quick little look at how the stock throttle tube pulls on the throttle cable with that stock ratio cam it has. And then I'll compare that a little bit later. You'll see when I do that same test with the new throttle tube. with its different cam ratio to tame down the throttle. I guess a little fly decided to join the party here and help me out. Once you get the bottom half of the housing off, basically you just need to pull up on the top and you need to release the throttle cable. So just keep pulling on it and you're basically just going to be pulling the throttle out of your carburetor by pulling that apart and then slip it right out of that little hole that the barrel is into. Once you got that apart, throttle tube comes right off. And then that thing has had the crap beat out of it, I'll tell you. Okay, so here you're going to get a really good look at the actual difference between these two throttle tubes. So you can kind of see that extreme difference in the cam ratio. So the stock one is real radiused, actually the same curvature all around, where the Throttle Tamer, you can see it's going to be a much lower angle until you get about halfway through the throttle, then it just zooms right back over to stock ratio. So that's going to help me kind of make smaller adjustments in the throttle instead of jumping up and hitting that power band all the time. That's going to equal out to power being transferred to the ground and not spinning all the time. The nice thing about this throttle tube is that for people like me that run handguards, you need to take out the end of the throttle tube. They actually thought about this. This is actually removable. So I use a screwdriver, just find something the same size as the inside of it, and then smack it out, and it'll just pop right out. Right there you can see that bushing inside there that makes that throttle really, really slippery and really, really smooth. Before you put your new throttle tube on, make sure you wipe off the handlebar, get any kind of dirt, anything that's been sitting underneath your current throttle tube. You don't want to get that on your new one and cause any premature wear. So putting this on is kind of a pain in the butt, but you have to pull the throttle cable out, hold it, and then get it back in that hole where the barrel goes in. Like I said before, make sure you get this the right way on that throttle, because you can put that throttle cam on either way. Make sure it's the correct way. You can see here where I just kind of got lost in thought and then couldn't remember if I had it on the right way. So I'm like, this can't be right. So I actually ended up taking it back off and spending a little bit of time thinking my way through this issue and then realizing finally that I'm just an idiot and I had it on right the first time. So don't second guess yourself, but make sure you do get it correct the first time. So like I said, get the throttle cable in the opening for the barrel. Once you get that in there, just kind of align it, put the throttle cable through the groove that's in the Throttle Tamer cam, and then you set to put it back in the housing. You're going to have to finagle it, move it around a little bit. Once you get it right, you'll know it just kind of clicks right in there. So there you go. Once you get in the right position, you kind of hear that click. That's how you know it's in there the right way. So after you get that, put the bottom half of the throttle housing on there. It should go on pretty easy. Just make sure you get it lined up with the throttle cam, and then the bolt holes will line up and it'll kind of click together and be kind of seamless. As you can see, there won't be any gaps or anything. So once you get it tight on there, just snug them up. Don't go crazy. Then I'm going to put the pulley back in for my throttle cable on the housing here. Always give it a couple test pulls, you know. And then right here you can kind of see the difference in how that cam is being pulled. It just kind of goes slower, and then all of a sudden, boom, it opens it up even faster. So if you remember what it looked like with the stock cam, you can see the difference. I kind of had to wiggle that bolt around a little bit to get the threads lined up because the pulley needed to shift over just a tiny bit. But once I got it lined up, went right in there, second bolt, right in, no problems. Nice and buttery smooth. Here I'm just going to tighten up these two screws a little bit more because the whole housing's moving, and I want to keep it in position so it doesn't slide around when I go to put the grips on. So for my grips, basically I went with the cheapest ones I saw, which were these Pro Tapers. They're like $9.99 or something like that. They're really, really thin. They didn't really last very long. Just a little, tell about the future, but whatever. The grip glue I'm going to use is a new one I'm going to try. Works pretty good. So get all the crap you have holding up your products for the video. Get all those out of the way. Even the socket. The grip glue is Motion Pro, and it's kind of like I would compare it to a rubber cement. So it doesn't set instantly like some of the Scott grip glue and some of the others do, where they're like a super glue. This one will set up after, I don't know, maybe like 10-15 minutes, and I think it takes 24 hours to completely dry, which is going to allow me to kind of have some lubricant as the grip slides on there instead of it just drying halfway on like the super glue does. So in order to keep any glue from going inside the throttle tube, I'm going to put that cap that I took off earlier, I'm going to put that back on so no glue gets shoved up inside there when I put the grip on. When putting the grip glue on, in my opinion, use as much as possible. I mean, if a little bit drips out, you can wipe it off because this stuff doesn't dry instantly. So I'm going to use my little finger bag so I don't get glue on my finger, and I'm just going to smear it all over the whole entire thing. I want to get as much of it covered as possible, and I'm going to put some inside the grip too. So that way I get full coverage because I don't want my grips spinning, especially when I'm going on a long ride like I'm planning to. So once you get the glue on there, just push the grip on, it'll slide right on, and you can see I did cut a hole in the end of the grip because there is a suction that happens when you try and put these grips on. So just cut a hole in the end of the grip, it keeps all that from happening. Now I need to cut off the end of the grip so I can get that little cover out of there. That way I can put my hand guards back on. So just use a razor blade. Be careful, it was kind of awkward because I was trying to keep my hand out of the video, but just do it as safely as possible. And you are going to get grip glue everywhere, so don't worry about that. Now I'm going to loosen the throttle housing back up because I need to slide the grip in. That way I'll have more room to put on my handguard because you can see the handlebars is actually in further than the grip. So just slide that in. It might bounce back out, but just hold it in with your hand. Now I'm going to put my handguard on there and then just start tightening it up. Okay, now another important thing is you need to make sure if you're running handguards like I am, you need to get that throttle tube just slightly, I mean maybe like 1/8 of an inch away from the handguard, because if it's too far over, your grip and throttle tube end will actually hit your handguard, and then you're going to have a sticking throttle, which no good, just no good, just don't do that. You're not going to have a fun time if your throttle is sticking, especially on these bikes like this one. I mean, they have plenty of power and it's going to end up hurting you. Okay, now you can have a fun time putting on the rubber cover over that throttle housing, which was just a treat. After that's good, just move your front brake assembly over, get it into the right position you like that's comfortable for you, tighten it up, and that's it. The other thing I had to do was put the grip on the other side. I'm not going to bother showing you guys that. It's kind of boring. But yeah, make sure you guys join me next time. I'm going to be putting some probably some handlebar risers on there, so wait for that video and check it out. Thanks.